You've got shit. I've got shit. We've all got shit. So let's therapize that shit with your host, me, Joy Gerhard. I am not a therapist. I cannot and do not diagnose anyone or prescribe anything. This is just me, someone who struggles with mental illness, emotions, and intrusive thoughts, sharing what skills I've used and how I've used them. Also, trigger warning, in this podcast, I talk about sensitive topics including mental illness, suicidal ideation, self-harm, rape, childhood sexual assault, trauma, and more. I also swear here and there, so listener discretion is advised. If you're new to the podcast, some context for you. I've gotten a ton of value out of doing group therapy and watching others process their shit. In group, I can see other people's patterns and behaviors much more clearly because they aren't my patterns and behaviors, but rather they're adjacent to mine. It's such a relief. I want to share this relief with you via this podcast, wherein I practice skills while actually in the thick of shit. Each episode, I typically do an introduction and provide some context. Then I play a recording of me actively dealing with shit. This isn't me talking about psychology, actually in distress, having strong emotions and strong urges. You're going to hear me crying, angry, numb. But my intention is always to move through an emotion, never to stay there. So stick with me, and we'll actually come out on the other side by the end of the episode. Alrighty, let's hop to it. Welcome. I am going to be doing something a little bit different today. Shocking, I know. So the recording that is of me sitting at the beach, starting to go through one of the DBT skills that I had talked about doing with my therapist. The skill is called Coping Ahead, and it is a skill in one of the modules of the DBT manual. I guess I should, by Marsha Linehan. And DBT stands for Dialectic Behavioral Therapy, and is the therapy modality or therapy type that seems to fit my brain and body best. The DBT manual is linked in the description, both in the PDF form and where you can buy a hard copy. Of it. Whenever I'm quoting the DBT manual, or really anyone else's work other than my own, I will turn on some reverb so that I sound like I'm in the National Cathedral, or more accurately, the National Cathedral bathroom. I will be referencing handouts from several of the different DBT modules. There's 4 of them, which are mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, emotion regulation, and distress tolerance. So when I mention a handout that I'm inclined. Also, before I forget, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters, Anne and Ruth. You both are ineffable dancing angels and are 95.3% of the reason this podcast exists for public consumption. So thank you oh so very much. And if you contribute to supporting this podcast, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description. So what are the skills that I use today? The recording that I'm going to be playing for you is actually something I recorded earlier today. And I was sitting on the beach by myself earlier today. And I was sitting on the beach by myself on an empty expanse of sand, and starting to walk myself through kind of the cope aheads that I need to do before a new thing I'm doing, which you'll hear all about and give folks a sense of what it sounds like to do this on the fly out in the world without my DBT manual by my side. So that's what you're going to be hearing. So I apologize in advance. There's going to be the occasional seagull. There's going to be some wind to do the sound editing to reduce that, so I apologize in advance for the stuff that I couldn't get rid of. There's also going to be some very just calming waves lapping at the shore in the background. And very just calming waves lapping at the shore in the background. And in addition, there's going to be some exclamation towards the end there when I interrupt myself to be excited over seeing two sea lions, or seals, rather, swimming just a few feet away from the beach. So you get to hear Joy's excited voice when I see something cute. That's fun. Other than that, I did want to mention throughout the episode, I didn't set out to do a cope ahead, though I think I kind of knew that that's what I was going to be aiming for. But what I ended up on was actually a different skill altogether. I wasn't really doing an actual cope ahead, like by the book. Rather, I was kind of meandering my way through, identifying some of the judgments that I was having, identifying some of the anxiety I was having. So that's also like mindfulness to current emotions, and just emotion regulation out 6, which walks through. Strike that. Let's try this again. That is, I'm gonna look it up in the book so I can sound intelligent and fool all of you. Emotion regulation handout 6 walks through the different emotions. Regulation handout 6 walks through the different emotions and how they feel. Ways to describe emotions is the title for emotion regulation handout 6. It goes over the prompting events for that feeling, interpretations of events that prompt that feeling, biological changes and experiences of that feeling, expressions and actions of that feeling, and then echoes or after effects of that feeling. And it's 10 pages long because each page gets its own feeling. So I was using some of the skills from that to kind of identify how I was feeling. Spoiler alert, it's anxious. And then also mindfulness of current emotions, which is, we're digging down. There we go. Emotion regulation handout 22, mindfulness of current emotions, letting go of emotion. And again, I'm doing all of this on the fly, sitting at the beach without my DBT manual, so I'm doing what I remember of these skills. But really, the skill that this ended up being the most of, let's see, it wasn't that. Cope ahead, for those playing at home, is on emotion regulation handout 19, build mastery and cope ahead. Cope ahead of time with difficult situations. But the primary thing I was doing on this recording, which I totally get wrong in the recording, I'm confident that it is an emotion regulation skill. It is not. It is a distress tolerance skill, specifically distracting, which is distress tolerance handout 7. Distracting, which is distress tolerance handout 7. And a way to remember these skills is the phrase, wise mind accepts. So Marsha Linehan really fucking loves her acronyms. Does it make any sense at all that the acronym for the distract skill would be accepts? And accepting is a different fucking skill. Okay, it's fine. Judgment, clearly. Emotions, pushing away, thoughts, and sensations. Specifically, you distract with activities, with contributing, with comparisons, with different emotions, with pushing away, with other thoughts, and with other sensations. So I was focusing on comparisons. There's only compare how you are feeling now to a time when you felt different. 2, think about people coping the same as you or less well than you. 3, compare yourself to those less fortunate. 4, watch reality shows about others' troubles. Read about disasters or others' suffering. Shows about others' troubles. Read about disasters or others' suffering. I don't know that I feel I don't know that it's I really only like the first one. All of that fumbling to say I really only like the first one. I think it's really easy to get into a holier than thou sort of perspective with comparisons. I think it's also really easy to dehumanize other people who are suffering. I think it's also easy to, well, I guess it is dehumanizing to be it's like suffering porn almost. Look at those poor people over there. Look at those homeless people over there. They're over there. They're other. They're separate. I am not part of that. And that doesn't feel great to me. So comparing how you feel now to a time when you felt different, I'm like, nobody's getting hurt in that instance. It's just me comparing. Yeah, so that's the primary skill that I used on today's recording. I do mention in passing, the different handouts that I just kind of rambled off of, and they're all linked in the description for your listening pleasure. Alrighty, let's hop to it. So I want to talk about something a little different today, which I appreciate I say at the beginning of every fucking episode, and it remains true. For the last week and a half or so, I've been pretty much bedridden with my chronic pelvic pain, and I chose describing my early episodes. Partly as a reminder to me of skill use, but also as an accessibility issue for SEO, for a bunch of different reasons. I think it's important to have a transcript of my podcast. So I've uploaded it into Word, had Word do the heavy lift. So I've uploaded it into Word, had Word do the heavy lifting of the first draft, and then I go through and I proof it and, make corrections, blah, blah, blah. And I need to stop doing that because it's bringing up a lot of shit from 4 years ago. So I am putting that on hold, and I am instead recording and talking about what's happening right now. So, starting next week, today's Wednesday, I'm talking about my HP, which is a partial hospitalization program, which is predominantly DBT skills. When you're in the psych ward, you live there, so it's a residential thing, and you have group during the day, 6 to 8 hours a day. You also have your meals and free time and meds, and you can hear all about my experience in a psych hospital in episode 45. But typically when you get demoted's not the right word. When you get discharged, demoted's not the right word. When you get discharged, it is recommended that you do a step-down program. So going from a residential to a PHP means you get to go home at the end of the night, but you're still doing kind of the same quantity of group therapy, and you see a psychiatrist and you see a therapist and all of that. And you do that 5 days a week for 8 hours a day for 6 to 8 weeks. And then after that, your next step down is into an IOP, which is an intensive outpatient program, which remotely via Zoom. And that is when you, words joy. It's for 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. And then the next step down from that would be kind of your regular skills group, which is what I've been in for the last 4 years, where it's, 2 hours a week, 2 hours, 1 day a week. And then you also have, your regular therapist. So, a regular therapist. So, I got into this PHP program, again, redundant because the second P is the word program. And I start in a few days, and I'm having some anxiety come up, quite a bit of anxiety come up. Quite a bit of anxiety come up. It means I will not be able to see my therapist for the duration of that time, and I'm having a lot of grief around that. I'm going to miss my therapist. One of the biggest deals for me about my therapist on vacation and things, but by and large, their consistency is a huge, huge feature of what works for me about our therapy. I'm also having some thoughts and feelings about the fact that I got a front that says hundreds of beautiful girls and 3 ugly ones. And I think a lot. I've meditated a lot about what the experience of one of the 3 ugly ones must be like when you get the call and you get the news that you've gotten the job. I've meditated a lot about what the experience of one of the 3 ugly ones must be like when you get the call and you get the news that you've gotten the job. There's the 1-2 punch of, "Hey, I got the job," and then 2, "Oh, I'm one of the ugly ones. Oh, I'm one of the ugly ones." And so I've been having the thought a lot lately that, yay, I got accepted. Yay, my insurance is covering it. And, oh God, am I in that bad of shape? Second. In John Mulaney's latest comedy routine, Baby J, he has a bit about his first day in rehab and going into group sessions in rehab. And he said, initially I was concerned that people would recognize me. But gradually, that concern was replaced by a different, far worse concern. That nobody would recognize me. And so I also have, my ego is having, oh my God, what if I get there and they're like, oh, clearly you don't need this, you're fine, you know this better than anyone. And then gradually that thought has been replaced by a bigger concern of, what if I get there and they cannot tell that I have ever done DBT? Skill level. There are going to be people who've never even heard of DBT there. And then there's going to be people who've been in DBT for years there. And it makes sense to me that they would do it this way, that they would kind of use the model of a one-room schoolhouse where you have kindergartners mixed in with fifth graders, mixed in with middle schoolers mixed in with high schoolers. The more advanced kids can teach the younger kids, can help them at least. And helping them helps you learn better. So certainly it helps you learn better. So certainly that is the case, that helping or supporting fellow classmates will also help me. But then additionally, there's contexts where I struggle to use certain skills. I can use non-judgment in a whole host of areas with other people, but seem to fail at it. I'm ineffective at it with my parents. I judge the ever-loving fuck out of them. Likely that I will be in group with people who, while I might be more skilled in one area, they might be more skilled in a different area, or with a different skill, or in a different context. And certainly hearing their stories and getting to kind of wade through the shit together is always really helpful. It's why I started this podcast. As I was doing my transcript of my very first episode, I was reminded that the reason I started the podcast was because I so enjoyed the group therapy sessions in the psych to do my best to create an environment to try to replicate that at a distance of like sharing how I've used skills, what has worked, what has not worked, with folks so that you guys could cheat off my homework, essentially. Hold that dialectic that, just because I have some skill in some areas doesn't mean that there's nothing for me to learn. And then I also have been noticing a lot of judgments that I'm having come up about the fact that I need this. That I didn't get just discharged from the hospital and told, "Hey, you're fine now. Go about your life." I got discharged and was told, "Hey, you should get into a PhD. Go about your life." I got discharged and was told, "Hey, you should get into a PhD." And I have judgments around that. But like, I've been doing DBT in some form or another for 9 years. And I have judgments around that. But like, I've been doing DBT in some form or another for 9 years. I have judgments. Like, I feel embarrassed that I need. My sister, hi Ann, made an analogy this morning that I thought was really helpful, so I wanted to share it with you guys. And because my sister knows that I am very fond of weightlifting, she was kind enough to use a weightlifting metaphor for me. She said, imagine you go to the gym and there's somebody there, any capacity, doesn't really have any sort of like physical lifestyle. And they get on the bench and they're trying to do a bench press with just the bar, and just the bar is 45 pounds. And they're really struggling to lift the bar. Like, you would not judge this person. They have a different skill level than you do. They don't have the same person. They have a different skill level than you do. They don't have the same experience that you do. You understand that this is a place where people of all skill levels can come. And it's good. And that's the vibe I always want in any gym I go to. That folks who've been going to a gym for 30 years feel welcome. Folks who this is their first time sweating feel welcome. And then my sister said, well, and then you are, let's say you're an Olympic weightlifter in this analogy. Lift them competitively. You do powerlifting. And I have no concept of how strong an Olympic powerlifter is. But let's say that I routinely am bench pressing 200 pounds. And this day, in the bench next to our amateur weightlifter, I am trying to bench 220. And I'm really struggling. And Anne said, the fact struggling does not negate that you are skillful. You are struggling because you were trying to do something you haven't done before. Which is really, it's really the reason anyone struggles, is that their context, and you can therefore struggle at every fucking skill level. You can, like a toddler can struggle to tie their shoes. And then an adult can struggle to do like basic seamanship knots, And then a quantum physicist can struggle to understand quantum entanglement. Like, clearly there's different levels of knots and engaging with knots. And because a quantum physicist is struggling with quantum entanglement doesn't mean they're not skillful. It's just entanglement doesn't mean they're not skillful. It's just that this particular context is outpaced their skill level. And in my particular context, apparently my context has outpaced my skill in resisting self-harm, though I do relapse. I have a lot of skill in emotion regulation, mindfulness, practicing radical acceptance, skills. But the fun thing about all of those is that it's all emotion regulation. None of that deals with like chronic pain, like physical pain. I don't have skills really to deal with that. I mean, radical acceptance can be useful. I guess. And I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Mindfulness, certainly, non-judgment, problem solving, but even when all of I don't know what to do when I've tried all of those and the pain is getting worse. So I have a skills gap. I have a context gap. And I'm having a ton of judgments that this is not a skills gap that I should have. For 10 years, I've had spasm that lasts 14 days and not checked myself into a psych ward. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. It started like mid-February of 2020. So I have this practice, and I'm struggling to see how this situation is different from that situation. And apparently it's different. I have different vulnerability factors running, different level of pain, different circumstances around the pain, like it's breaking through the Botox, which is bonkers. And the thing I've been trying to remind myself is, even when it feels like a Groundhog Day situation, and I'm just doing this over again, even in Groundhog Day, the movie, like each day, it wasn't like his memory was wiped at the end of each day. Each day, he had the memory of the day before, so he had more information, even though ostensibly all the days were all the same. Like, he woke up to the same fucking song. I'm pretty sure I've used this analogy on the podcast before, but I cannot remember. He woke up to the same song, he stepped in the same puddle, he had the same Ned Ryerson, if I'm remembering correctly. He had the same Ned Ryerson, if I'm remembering correctly, greet him. There were all of these components that were the same. But the reason that movie is a comedy and not an existential tragedy or horror movie, it starts out that way. Like, he keeps trying to kill movie. It starts out that way. Like, he keeps trying to kill himself because just the idea of living the same day over and over again is horrific. But then he starts to learn things, and he starts to apply the things he's learned, even though at that time he doesn't know that that will be the thing that will actually make the day stop. He's figured that this is just going to be how it goes now. But he still learns things and applies them, and he transforms into townspeople and stuff. And of course it's a movie. But it's also true of real life, unless you have a type of amnesia where your brain resets every day, you have the knowledge of the day before. And even though this feels very, very similar to previous circumstances, I have the knowledge of those circumstances from before. And part of me thinks, yeah, so what? Like, it doesn't fucking matter. It's not changing, It's not changing my circumstances. But then the other part of me thinks, well,
okay, even if I can't change my material circumstances, can I change how I feel about it? And we know there's times when, I was working with my dad on the remodel where something would go wrong and he would get really frustrated and I would just be like, "Yep, roll with the punches." And there were times where the inverse was the case, where something would go wrong and and he would just be like, "Yep, roll with the punches." And so even though our circumstances were pretty close to being the same, certainly there's differences. We're wired differently. He's the homeowner. There are of course differences. But like we're both working on this project. There are of course differences. But like we're both working on this project. We both experienced the thing going wrong. And one of us it's usually it's usually we would trade off. One of us would be the more grounded, kind of like chill, roll with the flow person. Go with the flow, roll with the punches. Be the frustrated person. So we know it's possible to have an experience and have a different reaction to it, a different emotional experience of it. The pipe spring a leak, or when the toilet wouldn't flush, or when the tile wouldn't go in. We were both there. We're both experiencing that, and we both had different emotional reactions to it. And even if we had, I think for and even if we had, I think frequently we would both experience like the frustration immediately, but then one of us would kind of give in to the emotion mind side of it, and the other would kind of give in to would stay in wise mind of like, yeah, this sucks. This is not what we planned for. Let's figure it out. And I think that happens in a lot of partnerships. Two people working towards a common goal, that usually one maintains a level head while the other one freaks out, and then the roles will switch. So even if I can't, is having the experience that it's having. And I had a meeting with the Department of Vocational Rehab people today. They're the ones who have, for a year, been trying to find me a job. And this meeting I was supposed to have 2 weeks ago, and then it got canceled and rescheduled for last week, which then got canceled and rescheduled for this morning. And then the dude who is contracted by the DVR to help me find the job, he was walking up and down a hallway in some sort of office building somewhere, cutting in and out, and the whole thing sucks. The whole thing, it's shitty. I keep feeling like I'm getting, the runaround, or like I'm not a priority or whatever during these meetings. It's unpleasant. But today was rough because to continue your job search because it's been a year. And I was like, fuck. So even though my material circumstances feel very similar to how it felt 4 years ago after the things ended with my former partner. The difference is, at that time, I was freshly out of a relationship. I am no longer freshly out of a relationship. I was new to job searching for that round of job searching. Now, I am not new. I don't remember who said this, but it's like, hey, maybe, yeah, that certification you want, maybe it's going to take you 2 years, but 2 years is going to pass anyway, so you might as well start it now, and in 2 years you'll have your certification. If it takes 5 years to find a job, I'd rather be 4 years in than no years in to a 5-year job search. Um, Like, if it takes 10 years to find a job, I'd still rather be 4 years in than no years in to a 10-year job search. And it still sucks. Some self-validation there. It still fucking sucks. It still sucks that it sucks to keep just hearing what feels like to me is a runaround of like, oh yeah, we're doing our best and here are all the contacts we've made and here's all the jobs we'd applied for, and of course, the job market is utter trash right now and it's really hard to get remote work and everything, but we're just going to keep on working. And that is the mantra. That's the thing I've heard every month for the last year. I'm tired of it. I'm annoyed about it. And I guess if it's going to take 5 years, I'd still rather be here than 4 years ago. I'd still rather be here than freshly out of a relationship and heartbroken and bursting into tears on every podcast episode. I'd still rather be here, willing to explore a new connection. My fucking pelvic floor is throwing a monkey in the wrench. That's not right. But that is a quote from Die Hard. A fly in the ointment, a monkey in the wrench. It's not how I wanted it to go. And I would still rather be in this place of willingness to explore a thing than where I was 4 years ago, which is deep grief and a lot of resistance to the facts, which is deep grief and a lot of resistance to the facts, etc. What this skill is. I just realized what skill I'm using right now. I'm pretty sure it's an improve the moment skill. I don't remember which letter. Or maybe it's why his mind accepts. Maybe it's that. Because improve is an acronym, IMPROVE, things for emotion regulation. And I think the C in accepts, one of the C's, is comparison. And I typically don't like this one. I think it can make us very holier than thou, especially if you're comparing yourself to someone else. Like, thank God I have a house that I can live in, unlike those people over there. The energy of that doesn't feel good to me. Oh, hello, seagull. But, I think looking for the positive differences. Because a lot of time, like, as I've been transcribing these old episodes, in I think episode 2 or 3, I was bemoaning how, oh my God, I'm where I was 8 years ago at that time, which is now 12 years ago. Comparisons, all of the similarities between where I was 4 years ago and where I was 8 years before that. And there are a lot of similarities. But even though my material circumstances might be the same, I am a different human than I was 4 years ago or 12 years ago. What is it? Is it like a Zen Buddhist phrase, or Confucius, or someone says, you can never stand in the same river twice? Like, we're constantly changing. The world is constantly changing. The people around us are constantly changing. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the sun go down and being aware of how even like a month ago where the sun was setting on the horizon is different than where the sun is setting now, because the season is changing, and that pathway where the arc the sun carves across the sky is constantly changing. Using the comparison is constantly changing. using the comparison thing, there are a lot of things I'm grateful for that, that were true 4 years ago and that were true 12 years ago that are not true now, and I'm really fucking grateful. I'm really fucking grateful. I have a lot less friction with my folks. I still have a ton of friction with my folks, but it's sure as fuck a lot less now than it was 4 or 12 years ago. I have a lock on my door. They're in therapy. Yeah, there's a lot of differences in how we relate to each other now, even though we still have a lot of areas where the conflict feels the same. Behaviors of theirs that still tools to deal with it differently. Like I have what I call my Bruce Lebany method, which is a portmanteau of Bruce Lee and my best friend Ebony, who suggested this. That when my folks talk about their faith, that rather than engage with them about it, rather than like push back or assert my beliefs or ask questions to try to undermine their faith or any of that, instead, kind of don't block the energy, just shift it past you, just move it past you, which I think Bruce Lee was the I don't know if he was the inventor of, but a very strong proponent of, and he talked about it quite a bit, of like, don't block the energy, just direct it past you. And so when my folks talk about their faith, I come at it from much more like the way you would if that's beautiful, well done, look at these brush strokes, oh, this is great, this is fantastic, good job. And so when my folks talk about their faith, I'm like, that's lovely for you. I hear you. That's nice that you have that thought. That's nice that you have that faith. I love that for you. That's congratulations. And does it change their beliefs? Absolutely not. Does it change my beliefs? Absolutely not. Does it change my emotional experience of hearing them talk about their faith? My brain will still start to argue with them internally. I don't voice it, but I will still start to argue with them. And I will go to my room after ending the conversation and sit there and have thoughts about, oh, I could have said this, or all of that sort of rumination. That's still happening. And I'm not creating a fight with my folks. I'm not saying things I regret. I'm not saying much of anything at all. I'm not dragging out the conversation. And when I would push back against my folks, they, of course, push back against my pushback. And they try to explain themselves more. And it turns, conversation into like a full-on debate. And it adds friction and tension beyond what is already present. So, oh, look, fog is coming in. Fascinating. Yeah, so all of that to say that even though the same topic of conversations continue to come up, my interaction with those topics has changed, and I'm not 100% reliable to do this, but I'm doing it way more than I used to, which was not at all. And now I have a lot less like entanglement with those conversations when they come up. I also end up, yes, good, okay, I hear you. So the conversations last shorter because we're not getting into an argument. So that's a difference, even though from the outside it might look the same. Joy is still living with their parents. Their parents are still evangelical. Their parents are still talking about their faith in front of Joy. Joy is still having an emotional reaction to hearing them talk about their faith. But I'm not making the situation worse by getting into a fight about it. And that's something. Getting into a fight about it. And that's something. And I think of, like, this came up in my last DBT group group meeting time with my regular group, where somebody said, that they're like, anyone who has ever raised a baby, like, your kid goes from crawling to walking, and yes, maybe they're slower starting to walk than maybe they were like a fucking steam engine while they were crawling. They can crawl really fast, and of course, moving up down for a bit. But any person who's ever raised a baby will tell you it is a massive fucking developmental leap for your kid to go from crawling to walking. In terms of how much investment, you don't have to necessarily pick them up all the time when you're outside. You can have them walk and then pick them up sometimes and then put them down and then pick them up and put them down. Their autonomy skyrockets pretty substantially. And so baby steps are nothing to sneeze at. That is a huge developmental leap, and also a required thing before you take adult steps or run. The baby steps have to come first. It is not the end goal. I think most folks hope that they develop and progress past walking like a newly walking baby, toddling. Walking baby, toddling. Yes, of course, the goal is to develop more advanced muscle strength and motor skills and all of that. And the baby step is actually a prerequisite, because you don't go from crawling to running marathons. So that's another form of comparison, kind of like acknowledging my behavior now, the things, the skills that I can do now a little bit that I couldn't do at all 4 or 12 years ago. And it's not where I want to end up. I certainly want to end up in a different place than this. And I'm also practicing accepting that this is a necessary stopover. This is a necessary stopover. Like, no one's destination is a rest stop or a truck stop or a gas station. But usually, if you're going a great distance, you have to stop at a rest stop or a truck stop or a gas distance. You have to stop at a rest stop or a truck stop or a gas station. And sometimes you have to stop there longer than you would like. Sometimes you have to wait in line for gas. Sometimes you have to wait in line for a toilet stall. Sometimes you have to wait in line for a toilet stall. Sometimes you have to wait in line to buy food. Sometimes you have to change your oil. Sometimes you have to shuffle all of your kids into the bathroom and take care of everybody. And necessary part of a road trip. Even though that's not the most enjoyable part of a road trip. It's never the part that somebody says, "Oh, hooray, I'm so excited to do this. I can't wait to stop at that Texaco on exit 176. Necessary step of getting to somewhere else, even though this feels like I've stopped at this gas station before. This feels like I've And maybe it is. Maybe it's the same gas station, but maybe my trip is different. Maybe it's the same, like, yes, here's another Texaco, but this is a different Texaco. Does it look the same? Yes, it does, because all Texacos look the same. But I am no longer at exit 17, I'm at exit 293. And that 293. And that's a different Texaco. And it also makes sense that I don't want to be at a fucking Texaco. That's not the point of this trip. I have a destination in mind. Even if the trip is the point, even if I just felt like going on a nice long road trip, the fun part is the scenic route. Texacos are not part of the fun part. They're the part that I will, like, stretch my gas tank as long as possible because I would much rather be driving than stopping at a gas station. Yes, this is not the ideal situation, and stopping here is still way the fuck better than being stranded on the side of the road because I ran out of gas. And now I'm trying to flag someone down, or I'm having to walk to go get a gas can, or whatever the fuck. Short-term versus long-term goals. Whatever the fuck. Short-term versus long-term goals. This short-term stopover that temporarily stops my forward movement is a necessary feature in order for me to have my long-term goal. And I'm annoyed by it. So I used a handful of skills here. Accept, I'm pretty sure, is what it was. Wise Mind accepts. It's an emotion regulation skill. Fucking seagull. I will link to it in the description. I rep a handful of other skills that are not quite as obviously featured. Pronouncedly featured? That's not prominently featured. Yeah, I think there was some validation in there, some cope ahead, validation in there, some cope ahead, some mindfulness of current emotions, some non-judgment. I will be doing another episode actually getting into kind of the nitty-gritty of my cope ahead beyond the things that I have talked about here, being autistic that I need to cope ahead for, and some other, like, emotional stuff that I'm anticipating happening. So I'm going to talk to my therapist about it, and we're going to come up with a plan for those over the next couple days, and I will share that with you. I will also be sharing with you all things that I'm learning, recording in their car on the way to or from DBT group, because that's a good time to record. Oh, look, a seal! Oh, there's 2 of them! Oh, look! Oh, hi, little guys! Hello! Oh, there's eyes! Hello! Oh, there's 2 seals. There's a big one and a little one. Oh, yeah! Oh, and they're hanging out together. Oh, look at the little guys. That's real nice. Oh, their little noses sticking in the air. They're just like the pups of the sea. I like a seal. They're really the only marine mammal that I can tolerate. I'm not a huge fan of charismatic megafauna, but I do like a seal. Yes, okay. Anyway, I'm getting joy on the fly here at the beach, clearly. And so I'm not going through a skill like step by step or whatever, kind of finding it as I go. And my hope is that this is useful and that you feel validated if you are having any of the same kind of thoughts or experiences that I've been having. So, okay. I'm just gonna do my usual thing and end this super.
This has been Let's Therapize That Shit with your host, me, Joy Gerhard. This has been Let's Therapize That Shit with your host, me, Joy Gerhard. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. I'll see you next time. Intro and outro music is Swan Lake Opus 20 by Tchaikovsky, performed by the London Symphony Orchestra, Constulari, and released on LP by Richmond High Fidelity London Records in 1952.